Gary Gardner is known as Gigi to his many friends and associates in the ham operators world. They've heard a lot about his exploits, one of which happened right here at Irving Mall. We hear more of his colorful adventures in this edition of Profiles. Gary, you're known as Gigi to all of your friends locally and nationally with all of the ham radio business that you're involved in.
That's correct.
And most people think of you as being an Irving boy, but you weren't born here, in fact.
Absolutely not. I was born in Galveston. I feel like an Irving person. I mean, that's what the most important part of my life happened in Irving since about when I was about 15.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's so interesting that you have all of these G names, and then you were born in Galveston.
Right.
And where did you live for the first 5 years of your life?
In the Galvez Hotel.
Oh, my goodness.
Right across from Seawall Boulevard. My dad was the manager.
That's great.
Uh-huh.
Family moved to Dallas and
Right.
then to Irving.
Right.
And tell me about your first memories of Irving.
My first memories of Irving when I was 15 years old, I'd been living in East Dallas. My parents informed me we were moving to Irving. I never even heard of it. They wanted to get better schools and stuff. So I told them, the thought of riding a bus just wasn't attractive to me. So I told them I want to get a motorcycle. They said, fine, you know, if you can pay for it, you can get whatever you want. So I did. I got me a job, moved to Irving, and I bought me a motorcycle. And I'd lived here for 2 weeks. And my main first memory of Irving, besides the new neighborhood and stuff, was waking up in the Irving Community Hospital because I'd had an accident. I was riding my motorcycle. I was working at the 183 drive-in late at night, and I had a paper route in the morning, pay for the motorcycle. And I was coming home, and a cab was coming down the road going about 20 miles an hour, real slow, looking for a house. And I was going along like that, and he turned right in front of me, and I hit him head on. And went over the hood, into the windshield, over the back, slid on the ground. I'll never forget the helmet, the sound of the gravel scraping against my ear. And I always believe in helmets because of that memory. And then I hit some trash cans in the fence, broke my arm, fractured my inside of my hip where the joint or the leg was, ended up in the Irving Community Hospital. I woke up 3 days later. This was on a Saturday, and school was supposed to start Monday. And I was excited about starting a new school, and there I was in the hospital.
And you couldn't go to school, obviously, in that
Not for 6 weeks. And the main reason was because I had a broken arm. I was supposed to walk with a cane because of the hip. I couldn't walk with the cane because I had my arm, so I had to rehabilitate at home, which I did when my mom was at work and stuff. And I got me a new motorcycle, by the way, during that time period. A friend of mine came over to see me. He'd got one just like it. I just couldn't stand it. We went out and rode them out at Rock Island, where they ride motorcycles, and fell and broke my other arm. Snuck back home. My friend helped me get home, put the motorcycle back in the garage, got back in bed right before my mother got home. How you doing, sweetie? And so I just fine. She goes, how you feeling? So I think I might have sprained my arm, and the bones hanging out, you know, compound fracture. Oh, she was so mad at me. And I made up some story about a rabbit running out in front of me, and I had to, you know, and she'd always give me a hard time about that. I ended up getting another cast on my arm, and then a week later I started school with 2 broken arms.
You started school with 2 broken arms.
6 weeks late.
And what kind of shape was your hip in?
Well, it was a lot better by that time because I've been rehabilitating.
Yeah.
And a week later I got one of the cast off, so I was able to walk with the cane a little bit. And so it was pretty tough starting a new school and the broken arms and all that. And I had to get an adaptive PE, which was kind of, you know, funky. And so it was not a good start. And so, you know, that was the 10th grade. And got off to a slow start. And then, you know, my junior year was coming up, and I remember the counselor coming to me. They had started some new experimental program. It's big now. We know it's at vocational education. And she said, we'd like to think about you maybe getting into the printing. I said, my handwriting is not that bad. And she explained to me it was a printing, you know, we learned to run presses, and you only went to school half a day. I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's all you had to tell me is I only go to school half a day. So I signed up, and I did that, and that was really important to me. My junior, senior year, I actually got interested in school again.
Wow.
And it was great.
Yeah. That kind of brings up the point, because you mentioned to me when we talked before that you'd always thought, oh, I don't really want to go to college.
No.
And you were looking for, well, what's going to be my next step? And then it just happened that this program was coming up the year that you were interested.
And it was just starting, and now it became much bigger. A lot more and more people doing that. Because I knew so many people had gone to college for no reason. They didn't know what they were going to do. They just got a degree and then ended up doing something totally different or doing a job that had nothing to do with their degree. They just went and wasted 4 years. Yeah. So really, for me, actually 5 years later, I went to college. Once I figured out what I wanted to do, after I got a job and went out in the world, and I got interested in real estate, and I got my real estate license and went to college And actually, I was a C student in school, which was really, I think I was kind of smart because I never took a book home, ever.
And you still managed to make C's.
Right. And I went to college. I was on the, A's, Dean's List, and all that because I was interested in what I was studying.
Yeah, and you needed to care about the subject matter.
Absolutely.
And you did, because that's how you were going to make your
And
living.
I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't seem like a waste of time.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting to me that you started out school with an adventure.
Absolutely.
And that motorcycles have also sort of played a part in your life.
Very much.
I don't want to get too far ahead of the game,
No.
because right after school, you had the printing in your background, and you moved. Oh, and there's the ham radio.
That's fine.
You moved to California. What took you out to California?
At the time, California was the hot and happening thing, 60s, 70s, and everybody was going to, it's one of them things, it's always the grass is greener kind of a deal.
Sure.
And so I went out to San Diego, and, motorcycles and beaches and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I went out there, and people were just cold. Here everybody's friendly, and a new person comes in, they introduce them around.
Yeah.
Just didn't get that there. And I actually met a lot of people. I worked for Jerry Lewis on his boat. Found out I'm seasick pretty easy and stuff. I parked cars at a high-end resort place. Drove every kind of car in the world, which was really great,
Yeah.
And rode a bicycle around on the beach. But I hated it.
Yeah.
And so about September, so I decided I want to come home. I was homesick. And so I did. I came back home, and I'll never forget getting off that plane and feeling that Texas heat. I'd always heard about it, but I'd never really understood it. But, boy, I knew what they were talking about. They hadn't been in California.
Right.
So I came back, moved back in with my parents, and I was there like a month or so, and I was looking for a job. And I kind of had long hair just getting out of school and everything. And so I was having trouble finding a job. And finally I got smart, because I think lazy people are smart. And I called a bunch of ink salesmen and said, hey, do you know where any jobs are, rather than going around looking?
Right.
And the ink salesman told me about a job maybe at Brana Printing. I had no idea it was an airline. So me and some buddies was going to go to the lake that day, and I went by to pick up an application. They sat out front. I'll never forget. I had on shorts, a shirt, no shoes. I was going to go get the app and come back down. And I got up there, and they found out I was interested in printing and wanted me to go in for an interview. My buddies are outside waiting for me. And they hired me and said, come to work on Monday. I couldn't believe it. And I got a job, and I didn't even know I was working for an airline, because it was at Exchange Park, which is like an office building. Right. And I was working for an airline, didn't even know it. And I worked in printing at Braniff Airlines for about 7 years, and eventually went into the airline part of it, actually working with the planes and all that kind of stuff for 4, until they folded in 1982.
Wow.
Very interesting, though, during that time frame, I was one of the youngest people working there. I got a bunch of these older guys interested in riding motorcycles. We used to go camping and all that. Almost every one of them got divorced. It was amazing.
Oh, boy, y'all was on too much.
Always going, and it just like a new life for them, midlife crisis for them, and they going along. And they was always giving me a hard time about riding too fast. If you're going to go race, go and race. And one guy betted me I wouldn't go race. So I actually entered into a motocross race, just on a bet, just for fun. And it was really a significant thing, because I actually started racing motorcycles seriously, and I raced motorcycles for 8 years, racing for Yamaha. I actually went to Eagle Knievel when he jumped the Snake River Canyon, and traveled all over the country racing, and it was really great. And it was a way to have a job, security over here, but living the life of a freestyle racer.
That you really wanted
Absolutely.
to do. Now, you mentioned a minute ago, and I let us get past it, and we need to go back to it, because it plays a little part in Irving history. You said something about having long hair.
Yes.
But you weren't allowed to have long hair in high school. In fact, you were a member of
what
they call the Irving 10.
What it was is it was like a class action suit. When I was in school, you couldn't have hair below your eyebrows, on your ears, or touching your collar. And they were very strict about that. It was a big thing. It's no big deal now. They're more worried about, do you have a cell phone, a gun, or is your hair too tall, you got it piercings. Seems so innocent now. And it was, really. But at the time, it was a big deal. And so one of my friends was Dad was on school board, and he filed a lawsuit. And we were harassed constantly, because we were part of that lawsuit and everything. And we did win the lawsuit, as we all know. And the next year, it came into play. But right before school was out, we paid the price. They really made her cut her hair really short. My hair was long in the annual, but at my graduation picture, very short. I didn't even want to do it. My mom just begged me to please do that. She goes, I'll never ask you to cut your hair again. So at the time, it was kind of a, I'm not going to cut my hair kind of a thing now. Now I'm too tall for my hair.
Is that what happened?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. So now we know. Now
Right.
we know. Well, and you found other ways to,
Sure.
with the hair
Absolutely.
thing. So let's go back to the motocross
Sure.
racing. So you're going out with these older guys, and they're teasing you about driving too fast, and on a bet, you enter a race. How'd you do in that race?
Well, really, I was just mainly don't want to get hurt. We went to a nighttime thing, and kind of a secondary kind. And I did fine. I wasn't going to win a trophy or nothing. But eventually, you know, then I liked to win a trophy. And then I got more and more interested. I mean, full blown. I mean, I had a van, the outfits. I raced every single weekend. Wow. I traveled all over the country working for the airline and racing for Yamaha. They put my bike in a truck and go to the races, and I'd fly in like a big-time star and go and race and then come back home to my security. And I never missed a day of work because of racing or being hurt. That was real important to me because I knew they were just looking for a reason to get mad at me. And all the Brandon people followed me and came to the races. I raced in Texas Stadium and the Astrodome and all over the place. So it was really kind of cool. And I enjoyed doing that. And like I said, motocross was very beginning then. It was like the pioneer days, and now it's really big, of course. And it went all the way to Evel Knievel and actually won the state championship. Then I retired after winning the state championship after racing motocross for about 5 years. Took 3 years off, and I started doing these motivation seminars, talking like they do, like instead of baseball, I talked about motocross. This kid says, too bad you're too old to do it anymore. So I got a new goal, started racing cross country, did that for 3 years, and I retired after doing that when I was about 32.
Wow. So you had about 11 years maybe, or 10 years?
Right.
Yeah.
And I worked at Brandon for 11, and so there I am. I had flying all the country, and I had a secondary job, and Brandon, I was working only I'd work 2 doubles and a single. I'd get all my days in 3 days. On the weekend, I had another job. I was making other money. And after I retired from motocross, I got into real estate, went and got my real estate license like I was telling you, went to one of these get-rich-quick seminars, went out and bought 6 houses, and I had these houses, and you know, that was my secondary income. Thank God I did, because when Brandon folded, that saved me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's the thing, for people who remember what Brandon was like.
Let me get the telemarketer. Hang on. Oh, okay, it's the wrong number.
Oh, all righty. Well, sometimes that happens. You
Yeah.
know, we get those. Brandon was a big deal.
Yes.
When people think back about
Especially
it.
with Irving.
It was one of the best known
Biggest
airlines.
airline.
Everybody was excited about them.
3 flights went out of DFW were Brandon and then one of all the other airlines. They were the only airline to have their own terminal, which ain't a big thing now because American has.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were the only one. 3 planes took off for one of every other airline. They were very instrumental in the DFW.
Okay, no, I did not realize that because, you know, the time has passed and Brandon
Sure,
is gone.
absolutely.
But I can remember how excited people were to be able to get a job at Brandon.
Absolutely.
And then how devastated they were when they folded, came back, and then finally folded.
Which I didn't go back because I knew if they didn't make it the first time, they wouldn't make it the second time.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was very big because I was actually at the DFW opening when the Concorde came in, you know, and that was a big deal. The Concorde coming in and all that was actually part of that. It was really, really cool to be out there and part of that whole thing.
You saw a bunch of changes because
Absolutely.
when you came to Irving, there was no airport. There was
Nope.
not even an Irving Mall, if I
There
remember
was no Texas
correctly.
Stadium.
Wow.
None of that.
So you saw a bunch of changes.
And eventually I ended up working at the mall, which was an amazing. And everything for me was around Irving. I worked at DFW. I worked at Love Field. I worked at the 183 Drive-In, the Park Plaza Drive-In. I worked at the Irving Mall for 7 years, and now I'm still working in Irving. So it's kind of great. I run into a lot of school friends and stuff like that around all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Gardner, you're not dead yet?
Exactly, and that's exactly what they say. I cannot believe you're still alive.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
I tell you, because you've had.
I've had plenty of chances.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna get to that. Now, in terms of adventure, so you did the real estate for
Yes.
a little while, and what was the next step for you? Because I know you had something happen things kind of went crazy.
Well,
for you.
after Brandon folded, and by the way, at that point, I was only 30-something. I traveled all over the world, been every place I'd ever want to go, you know, Hawaii, Europe, all that. And that was a great education for me, by the way. Better than reading it in a book, to go there, to see gas costing this much, or seeing this thing rather than reading about it. So after Brandon was up, I felt sorry for a lot of people who have been working there for 30 years stuff, but I knew that, okay, that was a great thing. I'm glad I was able to do it, but I still had a chance to get on with my life. And after working in printing and sitting at home, and I had 13 mortgages at the time, I remember, $3,800 a month and no job, it was challenging for me, to say the least. But I'm also a big believer in, you know, you only get as much as you can handle. And I knew I've always survived. I mean, I got this far. You always make it, don't feel like it. But it was, I mean, I was devastated. And so this friend of mine had a printing company and offered me a job working for him, like $1,000 a month. Then I'd only be losing $2,800 a month. Starting a whole new career selling printing. I'd always made printing, now I was selling it, which was pretty cool. It was hard getting started, though, you know, no clients or nothing. Within 8 months, though, I'd landed a big account with a talent, like a guy that has sports, you know, like clients, an agent. And I did a Jerry Cooney fight, so I got to meet all these different people. And anyway, ended up getting this big tennis deal that a lot of people were trying to get, advertising agencies and all that. I never done anything like that in my life. He didn't ask me if I could, you know, or had. And he, you know, asked me about references or some of my work. I said, well, even if I showed you some of my work, it don't mean I won't screw your job up. He goes, well, that's true. So I got this big deal, and I didn't even know what I was getting my head. It was the Belgian-American Mixed Doubles Tennis Classic at the brand new Las Colinas Country Club where Byron Nelson's deal is. Big deal. I didn't even know how to score tennis. It was amazing. And, or what doubles and all that stuff. And I did all the posters and all that. And I met every tennis star you ever heard of. Bjorn Borg, Martina, Chris Evert,
Wow.
Billie Jean King, all of them.
So you're meeting all these tennis stars.
Right.
And
I got all their autographs. It was really cool, you know.
Yeah.
And I did that 3 years in a row. And so that was really good. And then, like my luck would have it, I've had some really bad luck. You know, good luck is preparation meeting opportunity. I've had bad luck and wasn't prepared but was able to overcome it.
Yeah.
He died. So now that company folded. And so now there I am again. And so I sold one of the houses, you know, and paid off all my stuff and lived off of them houses for the next few years. Just kind of sat at home and just, you know, everything just always followed. Just, you know, my motivation and, you know, like, why bother, you know? Yeah. And so I just sat at home, lived off the rent houses and stuff. And
is this the period of time that you got involved in being a bounty hunter?
Well, what happened was I got into ham radio indirectly by getting a police scanner. And by listening to police scanner, I got into ham radio after 3 years of listening to that and met a bail bondsman who was a friend of mine, and became a bounty hunter for him long before it was a big deal on TV or any of that stuff, and did that. It was really fun, a lot of great stories there, and did that, and that was really dangerous. I had guns in my face, you name it. And so during that time, I was going to Radio Shack quite a bit, you know, and my friends were buying scanners, and we were listening and doing all that stuff. I was always going to Radio Shack, and always trying to get me to go work for them, and I wasn't that interested. And I got a picture of me somewhere I can show you, but I had it earlier. Look at my bounty hunting picture here. You'll really appreciate that.
That's really scary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And but you had to fit in, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Otherwise, they wouldn't believe you.
Yeah. And so doing the scan, and they're always trying to hire. So when the bounty hunt thing I thought, well, maybe I get a job at Radio Shack at Christmas to get a discount, you know, for a few months. Well, that was 9 years ago.
Ah, so why do you think you got hooked at Radio Shack?
Well, because I'm a ham radio guy. Ham radio guys always going in Radio Shack, buying little components and you know, like Tim the Tool Man, always modifying things and doing this and doing that, and the police scanners and radios and antennas, and I just liked all that kind of gadgets. I got them all over the place. My whole house is like a Radio Shack exhibit home, you know. And so I got the job, and I started a job at the mall for Christmas, temporary help. And like I say, I did that. I worked at the mall actually for 7 years until I had an incident up there.
Yeah, we'll get to that one because that was pretty significant thing going on. Well, now let me ask you about this. You started at Radio Shack and thinking, okay, I'm only going to be here for a little bit of time. I'll stay for Christmas. And not 9 years later, you've got all these plaques all over the wall as top salesman, top salesman, top salesman, top salesman. I know you because I bought my home entertainment system from you at Radio Shack, and I thought, boy, this guy's a real character.
Yeah.
I only what I didn't know then, I know now.
Absolutely.
What do you think it is about selling stuff at Radio Shack that's got you so jazzed?
Because people hate salesmen, and I do. Most people know that. I know it. No one likes salesmen, you know. And so I try not to be a good salesman because salesmen talk people into buying stuff they don't need. Yeah. I honestly try to treat anybody that comes in like it was my mother, my brother, and advise them, make suggestions, find out what the problem is, solve the problem. That's what I think sales is, solving their problem. And sometimes they don't need anything. Sometimes their buddy's getting the wrong, you know. Just give them advice and then help them solve the problems. And people always have problems, so they'll always bring them to you, help you solve them. And if you're good at solving problems, you'll get more of them. And then you don't have to sell, they'll buy.
Yeah, well, and all of the people that know you in the ham radio world, locally and, like I said, nationally, if they're here, they come find you.
Well, scanners is also a big deal because, like, police scanners and ham radio, and like they have these citizens on patrol, I-cops, and neighborhood watch groups, and these little old ladies that sit around and listen to scanners you visualize. People, they love it. There's thousands of them, and I'm like, you know, I'm like they're like a web. You know, I help them with their scanners. Something happens to it, I get them started. I program it, answer the question. You know, they're always coming in every day, and they love their scanners, listening and all that. Yeah. And some of them do it with the police and the fire and the drug dealers, everybody. I work both sides of the street. And people go to any Radio Shack, they ask about scanners, they send them to me.
Wow. Now, you've got call letters, right, as a ham radio operator?
Right. My FCC call sign issued like a radio station is KB5RKI. And I've had that since 1992.
Okay. And this RKI means something. What's
that? We have like what they call phonetics. A lot of people call it radio kept interesting. And it's just, they call it interesting because it's, the stories I tell for some reason, they're not like, self-promoting or whatever, but they're just my stories, people, I tell them, certainly they promote me or make me look good. Most of them don't. Some of them rather embarrassing, but people enjoy that too, It's like saying, hey, you think you got problems listening to this guy?
Yeah, there's life lessons.
Absolutely.
Because you've seen a lot.
Absolutely.
I want to know what happened to your house over by the airport.
Well, what happened was I had one of the houses I bought, they had these massage parlors over on Greenview, and they're about 13 massage parlors. And I bought one of those houses over there, and because I knew the massage parlors would be leaving. I bought the house for like $23,000. It was condemned. I remodeled it and all that, moved into it, lived in there for like 20 years. And after I lived off all these houses, sold one at a time, I was down to my last house and the one I was living in. And so, I knew something was coming on the horizon because I was running out of houses and money, and I had my savings, and the house got paid for. And I had my ham radio stuff there. And in the middle of the night, my hot tub came on because I had this little thing, timer, and it 17 degrees outside, the pipes were frozen, ended up catching the house on fire, and it burned. Most houses burn inside and burn out. This house burned outside, was burning in, and had me trapped in the house. My phone melted off the wall, couldn't even dial 911. All of a sudden the power went out in the middle of the night. It was 17 degrees outside. It was at the end of the street. Nobody was on the street. I was trapped in the house. My phone wouldn't work. I realized I had my ham radio out in my truck. So I got my dogs and I went out the back window. I went and got my van, and I turned it on. The ham guys was in Fort Worth. They all knew me, and they know I'm a kind of a kid or two. But but what you do is you say break, break. That means you have an emergency, and you don't kid around about stuff like that. They could tell by my voice I was serious, quivering. I'm sitting there literally watching my house burn. The front door was on fire. The back side door was on. The whole garage was fully engulfed. The flames were coming out the windows at about a 2 o'clock angle. The wind was blowing so hard from the north. They had to evacuate the neighbors. People heard on the radio, call for help. It was so great. Ham people are great. It's 17 degrees, 2 o'clock in the morning. 4 or 5 of them showed up. In fact, one of the bell bonds guy was one of the first guys that showed up. Drove over there, 4 of them in the middle of the night to help me out. And the house burned. It was pretty bad, a lot of smoke and water damage. Did about $38,000 damage. And I paid it off recently. And nobody bothered to tell me I was supposed to get my own insurance. So I found out later I didn't have no insurance. And I thought, man, isn't this horrible? Boy, it can't get any worse. Boy, was I wrong. What happened is the ham radio people were going to help me out, and they raised some money for me, and it's going to help me get some shingles to re-roof it. And they told me if I get the roof shingles off and stuff, that they'd all come over on the weekend and help me re-roof the house, which was great. So I spent 2 or 3 days getting the shingles off, and I'll never get it. I just gotten done. I went in and sat down at this very desk in my little office that has the other house, and I heard it start raining. And it rained one of them big thunderstorms, nothing on the roof, and it's coming in. And imagine it was like in a room like this, and I could hear the rain. Oh, please, just a little bit. I know it's going to be bad. And then all of a sudden I started seeing the little rusty-looking watermarks, and I could hear something in the other room, stuff breaking, and coffee tables. And I was talking on the radio, describing everything to the people listening. Many people remember this intensely. They also remember the fire night. And now this is happening. And I'll never forget, like in the room like I was sitting in, there was a crack, went right across where the ceiling fan was. It cracked. The water started dripping out. The ceiling fan was filling up with water, the light, the bulb. And then the sheetrock broke, and the ceiling fan blades busted, and it was hanging down electricity. I was describing everything. And it just, every piece of sheetrock in every room come crashing down on top of anything that was left. Did far more damage than the other one. And
I'd say that radio kept interesting.
I just remembered something real quick. What got me into the real estate thing, me and some friends were living together when I was doing the brand thing. My house burned there too. And one of my friends that was staying with me, he pushed the bed against the wall, the gas valve turned on, it had those little heaters, and the house exploded. I had nowhere to live. That's how I got into real estate. I had no place to live. They went and lived with their parents, and I went to one of them get-rich things, bought 6 houses so I'd never have that problem again. And that's how I got into real estate. I just now remembered. And then later on, then this happened. And so that was a very significant, important thing. And then this was like on the other end of the scale. It was really devastating. And now the flood thing, I had no electricity, no gas. I spent the next year and a half rebuilding that house. I started to do a TV series called This Damn House. But it was amazing. Finally built that house. I remodeled it. It was better than, I lived there 20 years. It was almost like brand new. The day I finished it, the airport came up, bought it, and bulldozed
it. That's kind of amazing.
That's why I had to go get a job at Radio Shack, because I was going to go get a new house, this one.
Because that one was purchased.
That's how it happened.
When you were working for Radio Shack,
Yeah.
and this was not very long ago at all, there was a
2 years
series
ago.
of
Yeah.
home invasions. How did that enter into your life?
I had no clue. There was a big thing going on. I know now, of course. It was all over the news. This had been going on about 11 months. And after going back and backtracking it, they've been having these home invasions over and over. And it seemed to be Hispanics hitting Hispanics in the daytime. And there was 3 guys. 2 would go in, kick the door in, get the people. The other one would drive around the neighborhood talking on the cell phone. They'd steal their car, get all their valuables, come out, and the other guy would follow them. They'd dump the car that they'd stole, took all the stuff out in the other car so their car wouldn't get burned.
They were real organized.
They'd done over 200 home invasions in Irving and Arlington in the last 11 months. I knew nothing about it. Anyway, one of these happened in August, about August the 23rd, a couple of years ago. I had no knowledge of it. I had my police scanner going, and I was listening, and I heard a call go out, and they'd been targeting the area right behind the mall, and they'd been watching it undercover and stuff. They got a call, and they got into a high-speed chase with these guys in the 2 cars. One car dumped out behind Sears, and the other one dumped out in front right there by Firestone. Well, I'm standing there minding my own business, and I see this guy come run through the mall, and I'm pretty sure he had a gun and he had a mask. I thought, what the heck? And I see these other 2 guys chasing him. And I'm thinking it's gangs or something chasing the other guy. I didn't know what was going on. But then I see this police officer, and he come running by, and he said, call for backup because his radio didn't work inside. And he's chasing this guy. I said, man, so I had the other guy call. I walked down by Barnes & Noble, and this was the day before school started. There was all these kids gathered around this one Mexican lady and by a mop, and I was saying, what's going on? What's going on? She goes, hey. She's pointing down. I looked, there was a gun in the bucket, and I couldn't go get help and secure the area. I couldn't leave. I didn't know what to do, and I wanted the kids to get the gun, so I picked up the gun. I knew you couldn't get fingerprints off it with the water. I picked it up, held it up in the air so nobody would think I'm pointing it at them. And I turned the corner by Barnes & Noble. This lady hollers, he's got a gun.
Things are going crazy in the mall, and what happens next?
Well, I had the gun up, and water's running down my arm, literally running down my pants. Looks like I'd gone to the restroom in my pants. I might have at that point. I'm walking through there, and I'm dripping water through the mall. You know how they're paranoid about water. She's mopping. I went out by Fuddruckers, found another gun, and now the cops come, and next thing I know, I'm down at the police station, and I'm in the middle of some mess, and it turned out to be a huge deal. Made the news, the TV. I didn't know what I was involved with. TV stations were trying to. Next thing I know, the big article come out in the paper, put my name in there, and I was pretty scared, and I had to testify in the trial, and I had to change stores, and it was amazing. 225 robberies they charged them with.
Wow. Well, it's so wonderful that they were able to catch them.
Right.
And weren't you able actually to ID them?
Well, I was the only guy, because see, 2 go in and 1 to drive around, so I was the only guy that seen all 3 of them together, and they was able to tie them together when I testified in the trial. And I met the 8-year-old kid that held a gun and made me feel good about it. I didn't get any reward or honors or anything, and I wasn't looking for any of that. That's not why I was doing it. I was just trying to keep the gun from the kids, and it just kind of escalated into something bigger than I even imagined.
Yeah, and all from having that police scanner going.
Absolutely.
Wow. Wow.
I moved to the other store over there in Pine, at Plymouth Park.
Right.
And actually there, when I'd just gotten out of the hospital, I had an open heart surgery, and I'm sitting there minding my own business, and I see this guy running across the parking lot. He looked suspicious, so I kind of followed him. And about an hour later, the FBI came in and said, hey, the bank got robbed. Y'all see the guy? And I said, yeah, and took him over and showed him where he lived, caught that bank robber, and they got him for 3 bank robberies. They said, man, we appreciate it. I said, don't put my name in the paper.
Whatever you do, just don't put my name in the paper. Well, Gary, you've had an extraordinary life. I mean, in addition to all the things that we've talked about, there were 2 times, after 37 years of not being in the hospital.
In 68.
Since high school.
37 years, never had an operation, never been in the hospital, never been sick.
2, boom, back to back in 6 months' time.
In the last 6 months or so, in the 6-month period, I literally had life-threatening. I had quadruple bypass. Took a week to stabilize me. It was a traumatic thing. Wasn't sure if I was going to make it. I mean, it went just amazing. 200 visitors or so on my ham radio. I don't have any relatives or anything. People come to see me. Felt really good about that. Got out of the hospital, recovered, went back to work at at Radio Shack, but right before Christmas, got over that right after Christmas in January. Thought I was having another. Turned out my gallbladder had died and exploded and had gangrene. Almost died a second time.
When you take a look back at all of the things that you've been through in terms of some of the adversity that you faced and how you've been able to overcome it all and these great adventures that you've had in your life, what kind of advice would you give people for Gary's life so far?
I try to deal with what really is real, and that's what's in front of me. I only deal like the weather. I look out the window. That's all that matters to me, is not what the forecast is, but what's outside that window, and I deal with that only. And I guess John Lennon probably said it better than I could ever say it. Life is what happens when you had other plans.